Hello and welcome to the Career Compass, Series 2, Episode 5. It's my great pleasure to be joined today by two guests, Carl Kirchoff, a former athlete and sports marketing media manager turned startup geek, and Sadra Shokouhi, technopreneur and CTO of Hashthink, a global AI tech firm headquartered out of Toronto, Canada. Gentlemen, great to have you both on the show. Thanks for coming on to speak with me.
Thanks for having us. It's a pleasure.
Of course.
And how are you
Great
both
to be
doing
here
so
today.
far?
Well, if I may start, 2023 was a very tough year for every startup, funding gaps and everything else, which we had to endure. And Q1 2024, at least for me, I'm sure it was for others as well, was already more successful than the whole 2023. So we're all for a good start, and we're very excited about 2024.
I should completely
Excellent.
agree as well. We had the same trajectories, a lot of trajectories after post-COVID were all like hanging around, and everybody was struggling about fundraising and getting their startups moving. So, but I think 2024, we have a lot of positivity in the market, and hoping a lot of good things would take off.
And I think I would share the same view, really. Essentially, from what we saw from our vantage point, was that the taps were not completely turned off, but certainly turned very tightly. And it was really only the startup founders that had a no-brainer idea, with an absolutely proven model, an MVP to go into the VC office that would really kind of unlock the funding, I think. So there are definitely green shoots. There are signs that things are loosening up quite a lot. And we're also pretty hopeful that the remainder of 2024 will be much more successful than the last one.
Absolutely.
So in terms of your individual biographies, guys, I'm aware that there's a very cool backstory for both of you here. So if we talk about you, Carl, you're involved in the very early days of the UEFA Champions League, for example. Sadra, you've been involved at ground floor level for numerous innovative startups across the world. Could you maybe each of you provide a brief 30-second bio for our viewers? Let's start with you, Sadra.
Absolutely. I'm an AI enthusiast. First of all, I should say, I'm a technology enthusiast. I got my master's in AI and computer science, and in the past 10, 12 years, I've been involved in multiple developments in both AI, blockchain, and technology space, working with a number of startups, SMEs globally in North America, UK, Singapore, Middle East, and Asia. And I'm right now all buckled up to create innovations, and that's what really excites me the most.
Awesome. What about yourself, Carl?
I had two lives. That's how I always call it. The first was in sports. I was an athlete myself, a swimmer, a beach volleyball player. And then I wrote my thesis about the management and financing of major tennis events. Became an early on employee of the UEFA Champions League and was responsible for media rights. At the same time, my passion for data and zeros and ones became stronger and stronger over time. And I left this whole human element of dealing and wheeling and got very deep into technology, helped building the first AI recommendation engine already in 2010. And since then, having invested and advised and built multiple AI companies over the last 12 years now.
So it's been quite an exciting journey and roadmap to get to this point. And of course, the word on everyone's lips these days is really around AI. Unless you've been hiding under a rock for the past 5 years, I think that insatiable pace of innovation in the field that we're seeing right now is pretty much uppermost on every discussion in our industry. So I guess an introduction to AI would be as good a place as any in terms of introducing our topic for the show today, which more specifically is around the impact of AI on the recruitment process. So I guess as an opening question, we're pretty involved in this space as headhunters, as search specialists. You guys are very much at the cutting edge on the technical side of the fence and crossing over into the world of VCs and investment. Could you talk a little bit from your perspective about what you're seeing in terms of how AI technologies are currently being integrated into hiring processes and maybe a little bit more around the primary benefits for companies and candidates, Sadra?
Absolutely. We all know one of the interesting industries out there, recruitment, is something that can be well enhanced in terms of its velocity, efficiency, and productivity. And the entire process of the from the very basic point of like looking up and finding resources to the very end of ending up with the hiring, is right now a process that I strongly believe that it can be well enhanced through AI. And the AI we're talking about today is not the AI that just emerged a year and a half ago after ChatGPT's release. It was an AI that we have been, at least our company and us, have been working for years on, and we have been training models, have been working with multiple databases that is able to handle large number of data and is able to like create large language models, small language models through them. So, but I believe recruitment is one of those very interesting industries because AI can play a very good role in the key aspects of candidate sourcing, screening, assessment, even the interviews, and finally onboarding. So I think all those 5 key steps can be well enhanced. So AI, yes, companies and recruitment agencies have been using that for a little while and have been using small pieces of that. But I think the technology we have today, that can be really well enhanced. So we'll get into the details, I think, in a little while together.
I think so. And a big part of our focus at Jarupa is maintaining visibility of the tech stack. What's on the roadmap? What can be utilized to improve the candidate experience? How can companies drive efficiencies in their workflow? What can they automate? All these questions are being asked on a continual basis. And we're, like yourselves, trying to kind of keep abreast of the latest innovations. And I think there is huge room for improvement. There's a great deal of focus around the candidate experience, particularly over the last 4 years, something which started, I would say, around the time of COVID. So this collective kind of shift to a new way of working, more comfort with remote-based activities. And I think over that time, there have been many stories about pretty poor experiences, from a candidate perspective, resumes going into black holes, lack of feedback, lack of human engagement and empathy and EQ, all the rest of it. So we've tried to introduce certain mechanisms into our own process around almost SLAs, to guarantee the candidates they will be dealt with in timely fashion. They'll get timely responses, professional feedback, constructive criticism as well, where needed. But I think there's a huge amount of possibility around what AI can bring into the process itself at all levels. Carl, I'd love to get your perspective on that as well.
On AI in the recruitment process, I think it's a big piece. And the automation has already been mentioned by Sadra. I think I would like to take a look at the soft side, the soft skills. Elon Musk just recently admitted again, I keep making mistakes because I keep hiring the wrong people. They're all based on Ivy League, from Stanford and so on and so on. On the resume, they all look fantastic. But in times of those diverse environments we're working in, with all the macroeconomic things happening and the remote working, which you mentioned earlier already, the soft skills are even more important, not only on the leadership level, but on any other level, to be honest. And my question, and of course, which I'm as an AI enthusiast are working on it, is how can you take and digitize this human element without any bias? And that's what fascinates me. And that's what I would like to see in the recruitment process even more, and particularly when it comes to the younger generation, which is not CV driven any longer.
Absolutely. And that kind of leads into the next point, which is we can talk about how AI tools make the recruitment process more efficient, but there has been, I think, and there continues to be, a slight element of concern around built-in biases. So a number of high-profile tests and experiments, if you like, have been run. In your opinion, how do the proposed solutions address the potential for AI to perpetuate or even exacerbate biases in hiring? And how do we tackle those? Is it just a question of better machine learning, better training, or is it more of a long-term evolution to get to that point, Sadra?
I think we all are witnessing that AI is taking the first good steps in terms of providing the key facilitation that is required to take the next steps. But we all are at the same time seeing the fact that AI is still making good mistakes out there that can be very detrimental for a lot of businesses. So imagine if we are we are enabling our AI to take over the entire recruitment process, or a good part of that, and it makes good mistakes in those parts, and we're going to be facing important and real massive issues there. So either AI needs to be, in my opinion, really well trained for niche industry with niche industry data for that to be able to really work well. This is why if you all witnessed like ChatGPT 1, 2, the previous versions of ChatGPT were pretty unsuccessful. Nobody heard about it, right? We all were thinking that ChatGPT came live on October or November 2022, but it was not the case. They've been working on it for years, and they have been also publicly releasing their releases. But it was not successful because the machine training, the data they were inserting, the way they were doing their engineering, and the model they were training was not adequate enough to be able to handle and give good results. So I would say the same aspect needs to be taken into consideration here today, that if we are enabling AI to take over some part of our process in terms of recruitment or any other process, we need to make sure it is given enough data, and so that it is able to think like a human. So we call that deep learning in machine learning. And deep learning is when we train the machine for that with proper data, with enough data, so that it's able to make decisions on our behalf, right? And I think it needs to be a sort of a tiptoeing process than a complete big bang takeover, so that we will gradually find mistakes and walk towards automating the entire process, not a one-time shot action, in my opinion.
And I guess the other piece is talking about AI augmenting our capabilities, freeing us up to have more time to focus on quality tasks or saving money, whatever it might be. At what point do we say there's a limit to how far we take out the human element or the emotional IQ, if you like? Given that candidates going through a hiring process, the cultural fit match is very, very important, if you like. To what kind of limit do you reduce the human element, Carl?
I would reduce it not at all. I think, like I mentioned earlier before, if we can digitize and put those digitized emotions into context, and this machine learns, any context is different, whether you are in different locations, whether you have a different age, whether you have a different ethnic group belonging, or anything else. This is not good or bad, but the mix of all those components together in one platform, unbiased, is something which I think is a good idea. Meaning, we don't keep the emotions out. We're trying to digitize those emotions and making sense of them.
It's just to add a quick point here. I think Carl's point is really valid, because I personally have been hiring, we all have, and we've been through that process and understanding that sometimes someone is completely meeting all our criteria when it comes to technical expertise or skills that are required on the paper. But when you happen to meet them, this is why we always say the third interview in a hiring process has to be an interview that is done with the actual manager or the leader of that team. And they need to find out if they're able to really have a fruitful 20 minutes conversation, and they're able to accept each other's opinion. So it's really important that if we are allowing AI to take over some part of that process, it is able to understand those human elements and is able to take part in filtering and screening that for us. Because at the end of the day, we are looking at velocity appreciation. We're looking at how we can provide efficiency and improve the process and make it a faster process, right? As a result, it is really important to see if we can add those elements. And ironically, just a few days ago, I was talking to one of our clients that we are looking at implementing a video analyzer tool that enables people who are going to be hired record themselves, go on a video call, and an AI will be asking questions, and then it would be understanding, and it will be asking psychographic psychology questions, team management related questions, and then at the end of the day, it would be analyzing and say, I would score this person 10 out of 10 or 5 out of 10 because they seem to be having trouble identifying certain things in team management. So if AI is given enough data in terms of what psychology is required in hiring process, what psychographic things need to be asked, what kind of behavioral importances are to be considered there, then is able to also analyze. And gradually, I think onboarding that into the actual hiring process would help us identify and speed up the entire process at the end.
And there's almost room, if you like, for the word gamification here, how to make the process a little bit more lighthearted, a bit more interactive. Not to say you're reducing the element of seriousness or gravitas that's required, but you're finding maybe innovative ways to make it less of a I'm talking to a machine scenario to this is a wonderful interactive experience, it's intelligent, it's using cutting edge tools. The conclusion I get to is that the role of data is critical. It's the lifeblood of AI systems. The more data, the more scenarios it can learn from, the more it'll improve over a period of time, I would say. So it's pretty exciting stuff. I was speaking to a guest on the show a couple of days back, and I commented that more manual tasks probably further down the line, right? So one example being I was on a train going somewhere and I spotted a billboard showing a building under construction, skyscraper, and it said, "Go ahead, AI, finish this building." And the guy kind of said, "Well, actually, I don't think we're that far away. I think there are robots that are probably 2.5, 3 years away from being able to construct a skyscraper to the exact dimensions, mix the cement to the right kind of composition, all the rest of it, satisfy building safety checks, all the rest." So it's quite an exciting time. And I guess from a selfish perspective, as a headhunter, it's that human element which I hope there is a little bit more time frame, right, till the AI can replicate that human judgment. So I prefer to look at this as an augmentation or a perfect kind of AI co-pilot, if you like, that enhances the process rather than replaces the human element.
Absolutely. That's how I would love to think about it. And this is the answer I'm always giving to people who ask if I'm going to be replaced by the AI. I'm always like, you're going to be enhanced with the AI. You're going to have less defects.
Yeah.
You're going to have your velocity appreciated. You're going to have a better experience of working on whatever you're working, and you will get done more. That's what AI is going to be assisting you with, not replacing you. And if somebody doesn't adopt AI, then potentially they could get replaced. That is the threat there, which I think everybody needs to be happy with at the end of the day.
Education is key. I would say you have to kind of keep yourself at the forefront. You must invest in your own knowledge, your own development, because as to your point, you will just get left behind pretty quickly, I would say, if you don't.
It's very interesting
Carl.
It's just to add a quick point. It's interesting. I was meeting someone in London. He was a psychologist, and he was having the exact same concern that whether he's going to be replaced with AI. And I was telling him that you could use AI to enhance your current experience, because he had the experience of 20 years being in the psychology industry. And imagine, same with the recruitment. Imagine we import years of knowledge and data that we have learned in the recruitment industry, or tens of thousands of resumes and data into that. So our AI could potentially make even better decisions than a human who would not remember every single bit of data in the past years. Right? So that is a key thing to understand and to adhere to.
I tend to agree. And the capability to spot gaps and to be able to work 24/7 without needing feeding or watering, to use kind of strange example, the possibilities are endless. I mean, the best $20 I spent was for a month's access to ChatGPT-4. And the capabilities for it to augment thinking, to summarize in the blink of an eye, the kind of ideas I wanted to expand upon, but perhaps didn't have the time or capacity to devote to. Invaluable, absolutely invaluable. So I think we've got to keep it in mind from that perspective as a very powerful tool that can add value as opposed to threaten. And I think that's the mistake a lot of people are making right now.
You mentioned really something interesting. When you use the AI as the one who is looking for candidates, what about candidates using AI to trick you and anyone else, right? They have access to ChatGPT themselves. They create something which is now so sophisticated. So how will you be able to evaluate based on the criteria of your clients, the companies who are looking for candidates?
Sorry, Carl, could you just say that once again? I think we just had a blip in the connection.
Yeah.
Apologies.
The technology is in everyone's hand. It's in your hand, which is enhancing your business and your processes. At the same time, the candidates have access to the same technology. And of course, the technology allows them to create profiles and resumes, which are better than probably reality, right? How will you use then those technologies to cipher through those technology-driven documents to make the right recommendation to your clients, which are looking to hire the right people?
Well, I guess in that case, I fall back on the human element. So the personal interaction, measuring the emotional intelligence quota, asking competency-based examples, behavioral traits, possibly running them through psychometric tests where necessary. I think a huge element of how this has worked in the past is on a positive gut feel. So I think gut feel tells you quite a lot. If you can trust your instincts and you know the company well enough and you can represent their culture, their ethos, the kind of people that match with them, I think that still counts for quite a lot. And it's more than likely AI will get to that point and replicate that. By which time I'm hoping to be on a beach somewhere in a far-flung destination drinking margaritas. But quite clearly, we have a spirit of transparency from our side where we're actively sharing prompts with candidates saying, look, put your resume or cover letter into ChatGPT, ask it these three questions or these three prompts. It'll give you a really fantastic way to present yourself. It'll elevate yourself above others. Utilize software that's creating digital avatars, if you wish, to create a different angle. So I think there's less sense in trying to hide things and keep things under wraps. The spirit of sharing and transparency is the best way. Clearly, as you rightly said, everyone has access to this stuff, so there's no reason to suggest that you'll gain an advantage by preventing access to the people around you.
Absolutely, and that's the beauty of it, where everybody will be using it to do the right thing and to leverage. So if everybody is given the same leverage, and then we will realize what the right thing is, and everybody does it in their own, not solely benefit, but they will be enhancing their performance, right? So if you have a better performance in terms of analyzing resumes and score them automatically through AI, which is one of the things that we are working on right now in the recruitment industry, then the candidates would have a chance as well to improve their existing resumes, improve their existing preparation they need to do for hiring process. And at the end of the day, if you look at it, this is what we want. We want the talent to be better. We want the talent to do a better resume. It's not about them just faking anything. It's about them preparing better. Sometimes people are not doing a good resume, and we go in an interview and realize the person is better than what the resume indicates. And that's bad. So if somebody can be as good as what the resume says, or the other way around, or at the same time, they would have a good chance of presenting themselves, then we will have a lot of time that a human has to spend to identify that saved.
Yeah, and I think that's the counter argument, as you rightly say. We have a whole arsenal of fantastic tools that can optimize how somebody is portrayed, their achievements, the way they're presented. Let's just say they go through that, and the hiring manager says, "Wow, we've got a real rock star COO coming in to start next week. We're super excited. They'll take us to the next level." They get into the chair, and within a week, it's quite clear that that same person isn't matching the documentation or the answers they provided or the presentation that they gave. You look at a tool like Grammarly, for example. If someone is using that all the time, they come across as though they have a PhD in the English language, right? So I think there has to be counterbalanced with an element of credit where it's due. Yes, I have utilized these tools in an intelligent way. So I've shown initiative to utilize the tools available to improve how I come across or how I solved a problem. But not to the point where you've kind of created a false narrative or raised a false impression. I think that's an element where it's kind of a misrepresentation at best.
True. There's a little bit of a different ideology there. I remember I was having this discussion with someone who was hiring technical software engineers, and he was a huge advocate of them, like doing the test on a paper and testing their actual technical skills. While I was saying every programmer interview has to have a chance of using a computer and an internet. Because if you're simulating how they're going to be ending up, when they end up working with you, they will have a chance of using a computer. So if they are interested in like possibly doing some research online before they write a program, or if you are hiring someone who's into literacy, English literacy, and we wanna ask them to turn everything off and write things on paper, while today they have a chance of using ChatGPT. At the end of the day, we're looking at them performing really well. So these are tools that enables them to perform better. We should not just look at them as tools that are used for people to represent who they are, to do things and represent who they are not and fake themselves. It's about them using those tools to flourish, in my opinion.
Mm. Mm. So to play devil's advocate on this one, this is a question for you, Carl. Where do you see AI potentially falling short in the recruitment process? How critical is the human touch in areas where AI is used? Are there any obvious weaknesses that you can see?
The obvious weakness of AI is it needs a lot of data. Otherwise, you would not even be able to call it AI. It's called the cold start problem. And if you see everyone is talking about AI, then in fact, they're not talking about AI. They talk about business intelligence, which becomes at some point machine learning technology, and maybe at some point AI, artificial intelligence. So the data sets which are required to call it AI are not existent in my mind, right? And unless you're LinkedIn, and then you have tons of data, and that's why people or companies are paying a lot of money for LinkedIn, because they have a lot of data sets from candidates, and you don't find this number of data sets in one company, and that's the reason why the conversation is in fact not about AI, it's about data. And when you talk about data, then
Absolutely.
you talk about bias and unbiased, and you talk about how to make sense of this data. And there are tools out there which are not necessarily AI, but technical tools which help you to hone in and make better decisions on both sides. And I think that's the conversation we should have.
We were talking a little bit about the candidate experience earlier and how
so much data
AI tools variously. Yeah, makes sense. Apologies for that. I think the audio crossed over there. My apologies. We were just talking earlier about the candidate experience and how the use of AI affects the journey that candidates are going on. We see huge benefit, but at the same time, I think there's a collective concern from certain quarters, and possibly these are generations that are a little bit more towards the autumn of their careers, around, do we really want to be talking just to machines? Do we want everything automated? Almost the equivalent from their perspective being on hold, waiting to press option 1, 2, 3. So I guess the answer to that is to make this a more interactive, personalized experience. Again, it comes back to the data, the ability for the machine to learn and improve over different scenarios. We see many different tools. So we see obviously gamification. We see different tests. There's the use of video, which has proliferated. There are more personalized outreaches. One of the things we try to do as a differentiator, it's not unique, but we try to create interactive candidate briefing packs. So when these mandates are going out to the candidates that we're targeting, they've got an all-in-one interactive document where they can access company mission, who's on the board, what's the current status of funding round, what's the ethos, what's the culture, what would be my mission, how would my success be measured. So in that sense, a lot of that is driven by the human element and conveying that, again, ripe for disruption with AI, or should I say improvement with AI. Are there any other particularly interesting use cases that you guys have seen in recent months with regard to the candidate experience? Maybe thinking about things like AI guardians that are checking in on employees, things like that. Sadra, over to you.
I would say that every AI tool that is used by recruiters, at the end of the day, is going to indirectly benefit the talents as well. Because imagine if it takes on average 10 days on a hiring process, it's going to be creating a lot of bad experience for the talents, like in terms of document sharing, in terms of what they need to be submitting to the company, what are the processes, what is my next interview. So if AI can help speed things up, that's the first good experience for the talents. That's the simplest thing I can comment on. But other than that, I think through the technology and tools that we have, I think it's a combination of software, technology, and AI. I wouldn't say AI is completely owning that, but I would say through the technology and tools that we have, and obviously they're enhanced through AI today, candidates are having a better chance of, first of all, analyzing what a company is, what the company they're applying a job for. Imagine if an AI can shed lights on, this is your future career, this company. This is what this and that person managed to achieve working in that company within the course of a 2 year. Imagine they could see their possible future perspectives of getting that role. It's important if AI can enlighten them on a lot of perspectives around that area, and also would help them understand that working with this company would have these advantages, at the same time would have these risks. Because, for instance, you'll be working on X and Y and B technologies that are very unique to that company, and the moment you leave that company, you won't have any job out there. So I think at the end of the day, it's more of AI having control over data and understand that. So it gives you better understanding, gives you better analytics, and more results, or a lot result oriented data in terms of helping you with understandings that are required in terms of what job I should go for, how good or bad this job is, and whether this is something that is fitting my personality. Is this something that who I am? And should I apply even for this? It's not about me just getting accepted. A lot of times we are choosing the wrong jobs, in my opinion, which AI can shed lights on and help us better identify that.
That's actually quite exciting, because this sounds like a completely unrelated analogy, but there is an AI-based cooking app which allows you to say, what's in my fridge? Okay, there's 4 eggs, there's a chunk of cheese, there's some onions in there, some carrots. Put them all in, it'll quickly search the database and say, well, out of those ingredients and those quantities, you can make these dishes. What about if there was a solution where the individual is on the point of a career change or a transformation? They want to go in a new direction, but they don't know where to go. Is there room for the AI equivalent here to say, well, based on your skills and your leanings and your passions, your desires, we recommend a career over here, but a lot more tailored, a lot more personalized than it has been in the past. So it could be quite an exciting direction.
It's an irony you should mention that, because we are working on an interesting route of making that happen right now. That's because I believe at the end of the day, it's about, like Carl mentioned, it's about data, but at the end of the day, it's not solely about that. It's about utilization. It's about coming up with that integration possibilities over what problem we can solve. And imagine, and I think a lot of times we are not given the right choices. It's not about we use AI for a purpose. Sometimes AI needs to tell us what to do. So the example you gave is a fantastic one, because not only in recruitment, but in every other industry, if AI can tell us what the next step is and what is right for us, instead of us going outbound, maybe AI can do an outbound to us. Maybe AI would take over and become a right hand from now on, become a personal assistant, something that we call an AI agent. And that's one of the key things that we are working on massively in our team right now, working globally, both in the UK and North America. A lot of companies are interested in building AI agents. It's the next level of chatbots, something that will take over my processes, understand, comprehend, and recommend.
It's a tremendously exciting time. I subscribe to a number of newsletters, so I'm reading on a pretty regular basis. If there's an article that flashes up, I'm drawn to it straight away. And obviously, being connected to guys like you, having regular conversations, it feels like the new industrial revolution. Well, it is in essence. We're living through it, and it's tremendously exciting. Looking forward on the innovations horizon, what are some of the most exciting things down the track that you guys can see without breaking any NDAs, or talking kind of openly and figuratively? What do you see coming down the track?
If I may, I would see a couple of interesting things, especially in the recruitment industry we're talking right now today. When it comes to assessment, AI can really well score resumes against job descriptions. It's something that has been missing massively today, and I still see recruiters going through resume after another, spending time going through them, identifying. They're using some tools out there to help them see if a resume has all the pieces, whether it has an introduction section, whether it has the skills and all that. But what if AI can help you score a resume within 10 seconds? It's something that we recently worked on. At the same time, what if AI can handle 1 or 2 interviews for you, right? What if AI, I'm not going to get into nitty gritty pieces to that because, like you said, there's confidential information there, but it's always about what process of that can it solve? I think some part of interview process, some part of resume scoring, some part of understanding whether this person fits all the criteria, apart from what your job description says, because you could see this role get into X and Y in future. And would you want to know if that client is looking at that perspective? What do you see yourself in 5 years? It's not like a very arbitrary sort of it's not very a cliche sort of a question. It's more of a well understanding that a company requires to have, whether this person sees that vision for themselves to be who, and well, if that aligns with the company's visions. If that will aligns, we'll see that people work at a company for years and achieve real good milestones, and some people don't. Sam Altman, CEO of ChatGPT, that was an example. We all saw what happened 4 months ago. The fight they were having with the board and him getting fired within 2 days and then coming back on the team. That shows an example of, if you're not on the same page, chaos can happen. You could be great at what you do, but if you're not on the same page with where the company's visions are, you could be Sam Altman, who has been doing that, building one of the most successful companies out there, and you could still get fired. So it's important to have that alignment there.
I think the other kind of offshoot from that conversation is around things are going to become, to a point where AI becomes much more ingrained in the hiring process. So what are the ethical considerations that companies need to keep in mind to make sure they're using it responsibly, Carl?
Well, if you imagine machine learning technology, predictive analytics is being used by governments and for military purposes, and they leverage, for example, game theory to predict different outcomes. And then the example was just mentioned by Sadra. Of course, you could do this, right? You could say, person A, Sam Altman type, bought those types, employees, those types, market. So if you're going to put all this together, you would be able to see the outcome. Nothing else has been done by the founder of IBM, Watson, who left IBM to start a hedge fund to predict the stock market. And he was doing extremely well. So this technology, if you have so much data in hand, can predict a lot. The question in my mind is the key question, is about consent. And as we all know now, ChatGPT OpenAI is scrapping data without consent, believing Facebook did it. Why shouldn't I be able to do it as well? Sue me later. That's a question. How far do we want to go? And more the question is, do we want to use OpenAI, or do we want to use open source LLMs and AI models? And then the really hard question is, which Jon Stewart is talking about right now with Lina Khan, for example, from USA. Are we facing an oligarchy, or are we facing even a dictatorship? And are those top 5 companies, Microsoft, Google, and so on, already so much dominating that there is no other space any longer, and they just predict and do whatever they want? And I think that's the very fascinating conversation of how do you define ethical AI? And even more important, how do you police and enforce those things of a technology which is not deterministic, because it develops, right? And you don't know the outcome. That's why it's called machine learning. So that's a really interesting question in my mind, and it remains to be seen who will be driving this, whether this is the private sector or the public sector. But the private sector is already way ahead, and that's my concern.
Yeah.
Thanks, Carl. To quickly comment on that, on the ethics side, let me give you an example for our audience, and maybe they can comment on this. What if, when you're being hired today, what if an AI is able to tell your recruiter that you're spending 5 hours a day playing video games. And that is data that is publicly available out there. You're playing on Discord, you're playing on a lot of tools out there that is like on Facebook, on Instagram, you're sharing your gaming experience and so forth. What would you be happy, or would you think is ethical for your recruiter to have those data access, to know that you're playing games a few hours a day, to know that you're trading cryptocurrencies, to know that you're spending outside, going out with your friends and do that, this and that? Would you say at the end of the day, these are data, these are publicly shared data that you are willingly doing to your social media? Would you be happy? Obviously, a recruiter would be happy because they'll have more data to play around with. They would know that if somebody plays games until 1 a.m., then likely they may not have a good performance as good as somebody who sleeps at 10 p.m. fine and wakes up fresh at 8 a.m. So if somebody is having those habits, would you think it's ethical to have the recruiters access to those? That's a question for everybody to answer. There's no yes or no to that.
You can ask Microsoft, who owns LinkedIn.
Right. There you go. It's a debate for another day. I can imagine.
I think we need Elon Musk and Zuckerberg and everybody involved into this. Comment below, guys, and see what they think.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start the debate today. There is obviously a huge amount of skepticism or fear, more accurately, about AI replacing human jobs. You've seen it all through history. You look at the initial industrial revolution here in the UK, the Luddites that went around smashing the machines in the factories. Similar climate of fear, I guess, in our time. How do you address those concerns, Sadra, especially in the context of using AI for various jobs, copywriters, translators, search firms, lawyers even? What would you say to those guys?
Right. In terms of like being able to, are we referring to people who are using AI for content generation?
I guess more from those who are in a career where they've been reading lots of doom-mongering stories. It's a huge change. We're in a kind of moment of transformation. Jobs will be lost. My livelihood's at stake. We talked a little bit about the augmentation.
Sure. I think it's a simple thing. It's a question to ask ourselves. Let's forget about AI for a second. Let's talk about 2005. What were we doing? What kind of technology did we have access to? And did we not evolve? Did we not end up using a lot of Excels? Did we not end up using a lot of CRMs and CMSs to automate a lot of our process, to organize things? We did. And at the end of the day, we didn't really have a lot of replacement. We improved and we got better. So the era we are in today, the AI era, at least the public access AI era, I would say, is the same thing. We are in a period that we are improving user experience. If you choose not to use it and be against it because you think it's automating is automating too much or is replacing you, you could get replaced. That's the honest opinion. Imagine if somebody was doing what CRMs were doing. They were taking notes on paper 20 years ago, 25 years ago. What if they don't? If they didn't adopt using CRMs and CMSs, they were already replaced. They're already completely jobless. Yep. So I would advise everyone out there who's thinking they're gonna be replaced. And the irony is, just a few days ago, I was working at a Starbucks in Toronto, and I saw two painters. They were doing drawing on the desk, and I told them that they were using a picture against it, and they were drawing the actual picture. So it was like a job they were doing. And I told them that, I can upload this picture onto multiple platforms out there and get a exact same drawing you're spending 3 days for within 10 seconds with $5, and you're costing $500. Both of them got really mad at me and say, "Oh, you guys are like replacing us, and what do you think artificial intelligence is doing? Is creating joblessness?" But my answer is, why don't you, as an artist, utilize that to get ideas and improve your work and do a job instead of 3 days, spend half a day and do that. So it's about improvement of your process. So if you're out there, you're intimidated by how AI is taking over the world, it's okay. First of all, it's not going to be that fast. Take an action, adopt it, and be nice to it. It is your friend, not your enemy.
It is. It's a wonderful tool. I mean, you could use the analogy of the smartphone, or even going back to the first iPhone. Was it 2006? Around there?
Around that, yeah.
and this incredible kind of device sitting in the pocket. It could make calls, it could take pictures, it could record videos, translate languages. It could be a map, could be a compass, anything you want. And it obviously grew from there. But such a game changer, at that moment. And again, there are many examples which you kind of touched upon where we've always innovated, we've always evolved, we've always adapted somehow. Necessity is the mother of invention, which is one of those great old adages, and it applies here. I think it's change is constant. We just have to make sure we're keeping at the front of it as best we can. So,
Absolutely.
I think a final question for you both here, I guess, don't fight over it necessarily, but what kind of advice would you give to companies that are at the start of the journey? They're considering integrating AI into their hiring process. They probably don't know where to start. What first steps would they take? Sadra, I'll go to you first.
The first thing I would say is that look at the tasks that are very cumbersome to you today. What are the tasks that are taking most of your time? What are the tasks you're hiring, your team is spending a lot of time on? And what are the tasks that you're making the most mistakes at? Let's write them down and let's come up with solutions to mitigate them. This is exactly the approach we always take. And that's one of the approaches when we build AI tools for businesses right now we do. So in recruitment industry, I would see still, I know there's some startups working on it. I would say despite all, there's still a lot of room for whatever CRM you think you're using the best AI CRM, which was called just a typical CRM 6 months ago, and they call themselves AI CRM today. There's a huge room of automating, improving processes, making your employees enjoy the work and have those cumbersome repeated works that they make mistakes. Because at the end of the day, human is limited. We say we are the best species out there or whatever. We are, but we are limited to time, emotions, and performance. We are not even able to focus more than an hour on a conversation. Imagine we are limited. But AI is not limited. It is able to focus. What if it is able to add? It is able to help us to decrease the chance of lapses, the mistakes that we make through analyzing a resume, through understanding if this person is a right fit, and the biasness we talked about. It's an irony in North America, at least in Canada part, you're not allowed to put your date of birth, gender, background, what country you come from, and all that in a resume. And even an employer is not allowed to ask you those information. You have a chance of suing them because you're supposed to be judged on your skills, not your skin color, not what your background is, and not what your even gender is. So I think those are the problems that AI is able to solve. And for all recruiters out there, take actions. And we are running a program right now. We are able to speak to them and help you understand those issues you're having and help you come down to a solution. But taking actions is a key thing. Write down your problems. Write down what is taking the most of your time, and let's take an action towards it. And don't be intimidated. Don't think your AI is gonna make you fire a lot of guys. If it does, it's for good, but it's gonna make your job easier. That's the point.
I'd agree. What about you, Carl? What do you think?
I think everything what Sadra mentioned is absolutely right. Look at your problems, look at your processes. At the same time, I think we mentioned it earlier already, start with something small. Don't get overwhelmed by the power of AI and about this technology. Start with small things like customer care, have a chatbot. All those chatbots in the past were deterministic. Now chatbots are dynamic and they learn. And just by implementing a chatbot, which doesn't cost you much, you will learn already about this technology. And then back on this, you can start and looking into other processes outside of customer care, right? We talked about gamification, for example. You can play around with avatars. Any other task, which is typical AI, is if you have a mass of information and you need a kind of summary out of this, a lot of information which is across the internet, then those are simple tools. They don't cost much and they get a lot of your time and processes to improve. And once you started with those, you can think about the bigger picture of matchmaking and predictive analytics and whatever AI can do, anything else, which we talked early on, like digitizing emotions and gut feelings, which is the final end.
Yeah, step by step. Don't eat the elephant from the off. I would say interesting kind of closing thought to share. So just prior to going into this recording, it was announced today that in the UK, a landmark agreement has been signed between the UK and the US on artificial intelligence, according to the FT. And the agreement essentially will see the two countries formally cooperate on how to test and assess risks from emerging AI models. So it's all around that guardrail piece, effectively. Well, guys, this has been a fascinating conversation. I've enjoyed every minute. I've learned a lot, and there's yet so much more to discuss. So potentially we'll do this again and expand a little further. I really appreciate you both coming onto the show, taking the time to speak with me. If any of our viewers or listeners do have questions they would like to pose to myself, Sadra, or Carl, you'll find our contact details in the episode description. So until next time, thank you both, gentlemen, and enjoy the rest of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
All the best.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.